Okay, here we are with Letty.
Hello.
Oops. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, so Letty, when's your birthday?
November 4th, 1991.
Okay, time?
8:32 p.m. in the evening.
Uh,
Sorry, in military time, that is. You'd
I
probably
got the
know
time
better than I
already.
would. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Albany, New York, ALBANY.
All right, brilliant. We have 14 degrees Cancer rising.
Yep. So
Okay,
my Cancer rising, and then Libra moon, Scorpio sun.
correct. Very good. Okay. Um, so money. Let's start with what do you do for income? Where does money come from?
So, I would. This is a very tough question. Well, right now I am in higher ed, so I work. I used to be an educator. I used to be elementary school, and then have transitioned out of that. It was not a great work-life balance. So now I work in higher ed, and I sort of look at transcripts that come in. So anytime we get any sort of schooling that comes in, I'm taking a look at it, seeing, what we can take, what we can't take towards a degree. So sort of higher ed, but also sort of administrative right now. I'm also an artist on the side, although that really doesn't pay the bills. So I wouldn't say my creative career is what actually right now pairs with money. That's hopefully I can clear some stuff that will make that happen. But for the time being, it's definitely has been, I would say, more of the like I see teaching as a giving profession, as a honestly, I think at its core, it is a healing profession. I think that is sort of where I find like my inner power is when I'm helping others and in service. Um, but if that's out of balance, I think that also is not necessarily something that works for me. I know that's way beyond what you asked, but I have done some work on my relationship with my career and also like my relationship around money. So yeah, so that's where it comes in right now. And I'm trying to find that kind of balance of like where can I pull the creativity a little bit more into that monetary setting.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to have quite a few questions for you. The first of
Okay.
them, it's just to clarify because what I understood, like you work in higher ed,
Mm-hmm.
and I understood is it's kind of administrative work because you're
Yes.
seeing which credits you can accept and which you can't. Did I understand
Yeah.
that?
So it's we're sort of a very interesting institution. We primarily serve students who are adults. And so what our school is known for is, for example, if someone has been working in the military. I just happen to be in the technology school. So we got a lot of engineers, we get a lot of cybersecurity, we get that kind of thing. So a lot of times we will take credits, like if someone has been in the military, we'll evaluate those credits and say, okay, you have this much experience. We're not going to make you retake certain classes because you obviously have expertise in that. So what my job is to sort of evaluate that. And there's all sorts of rules around that. And then we're able to kind of set up a program for them of what they would like to study so they can hopefully get a degree.
Okay. So and how much do you earn from doing that?
I make 51,000, and then I also have a part-time job on the side. So this is in American dollars. Um, on the side, I also work for a behavioral analysis company. What they essentially do is we work with children with autism. And since I have a background in education and I have some of the psychology background, um, I started working for them, and I do a little bit of everything. I go over, no, I'm not necessarily a therapist, but I go over the notes that the therapists, bring in who are working with children. A lot of time I'll do a lot of their insurance billing, things like that. So again, kind of pulled towards the administrative side, which I never, earlier in my career when I was just a teacher, I never thought that that was something that was a strength for me. And because I'm very unorganized in my life, I have somehow found it as like something I'm very good at because I've had to learn organizational skills. And so now I'm very good at looking at a spreadsheet, looking at data, looking at those types of things. And that's kind of just fallen into administrative. So yeah.
Okay. There's a few things that come up for me so far. And of course I try to keep it to money, but it's hard because there's so many things to discuss that are around money.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, wait a minute. I had turned off all the aspects. That's why there's nothing happening. Just a second. Queen Kongs. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay. And yeah, then I want to take out Neptune and Uranus and Pluto and Mercury and the moon. Okay. The Sun Mars I'm leaving in there just because you said that your life is actually quite disorganized and chaotic, and so you had to learn organizational skills. So immediately that made me think about the Sun Mars, right? Maybe we'll go more into that, but I just felt it
Okay.
pretty strongly. And as far as like the actual income goes, these are the three planets I'm feeling so far. One of them, of course, is like Jupiter in your third house, just
Mm-hmm.
from the fact that you were a teacher and even now you work in educational institutions. And I guess that says a lot of other things about you, but I just don't want to go there now.
Yeah.
And um, the other part is that like your Venus at the bottom of your chart. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
this area where your Venus is conjunct the cusp of your fourth house, that is kind of like the deepest part of you.
Okay.
Like the one that you know about yourself. So this is who you really are, like your most natural inner hidden self that other people don't relate to. So the Venus that you have Venus there makes me think about you being because you said that you love to be in service to other people. There I get the Venus,
Mm-hmm.
especially just because Venus is very cooperative. She's very kind. She's very polite. Yeah, she likes things to be very nice. And in this case, it's in the sign of Virgo. Virgo's the administrator because it's ruled by
Okay.
Mercury. So in that case, it's yeah, looking at all the different documents, reading through things, like having an eye for the detail and what's happening in the different. Yeah, just like with the teaching, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Enjoying to make information like very easy and understandable. Venus,
Yep.
Virgo. Okay.
Wow. That's cool. That makes a lot of sense too, because like the sort of like there has been a lot of people pleasing, and you were talking about like making everything comfortable for everyone, and like yes, that has come up a lot in my life. And that is something I'm trying to pull apart from that sort of teaching aspect and the helping aspect, but not helping so much that I then take from myself. So I feel like it's kind of that weird friction of, okay, how do I pull out these sort of gifts of the helping and the just innate empathy and understanding without kind of harming myself. So that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll go more to Venus because I have a feeling it's going to be very relevant in the things we talk about today. The other part I wanted to reflect is the Saturn in Aquarius
Okay.
in the seventh. Saturn is about rules and regulations, and Aquarius is like when you work in systems that
Mm-hmm.
have certain rules, or like working at a university or working for a school district, that would be Aquarius because it's like groups of people making decisions
Yep.
together. Okay, so working at that level, I really feel your Saturn in Aquarius. Also that you're determining whether people can, like, they do have enough credits or they don't.
Yep.
right? So that's the set, like you're determining whether someone can enroll or not, essentially, or whether they're gonna not have to pay for those credits or whatever and take them again.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Same with like, notice you said that for the part-time job that you do, you end up doing their insurance billing. That's boring
Hmm.
ass work in my
Oh,
opinion,
so
right?
boring.
But you have an eye for it. And so again, for me, that's like the Saturn in Aquarius, because it's the insurance billing, for the whole corporation, the organization, right? And then again, your Venus placement, and your Jupiter as well.
Okay. I don't know if this is, and I know that this is not necessarily money oriented, but I was looking at the Aquarius, and I do have like in the idea of rules, and I don't know if this is accurate with the Aquarius, but I do feel that I believe in rules, but more moral rules and institutional rules. Obviously, I have to follow to some extent to be in a company, but like I feel like is Aquarius a little more like higher level sort of stuff?
Well, we would have to get into that, because then I
Yeah,
would
that's
want
like
to
a
talk
different.
about the specific. Yeah, let's just keep it to money for now. I'm sorry
Yeah,
about.
sorry.
I would love
No, 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 not at all.
even I'm learning how to right, because once we start exploring the chart, it's like, whoa,
Yeah,
it takes us to so many interesting places. And this is
totally.
a challenge for me also to not get lost and just to stay with the
Yeah, and
money.
just do money. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Okay, good.
focused.
Very good. Thank you. Good. Okay, so that is your income now. This is kind of a series of questions, right? So you can't answer them all at once, but it's like, kind of, how do you relate to money in general? Like, do you
Mhm.
feel tight about it? Do you feel very open about it historically and now? And then what do you spend on? Right? What is very valuable for you that you really give money for?
Okay. Um, so historically, I think there's been a lot of shame around money, as for I think a lot of people. Uh, I don't know. I've slowly grown to learn that, you know, um, I think that I'm very happy to have gone through periods of my life, especially right now, where like I'm not making a ton of money because I've had to learn how to, because I really don't believe that like the amount of money you make matters. It's truly like how you look at it, how you go about it. Like, I mean, that I say that to an extent. Obviously, there is like a poverty rate. Obviously, there are people like I'm coming from a very sort of privileged place in saying that. But I think that there comes a point like I've made more money, I've made less money, and I found that over the years that I've learned very slowly that there's not shame in money. It's just learning how to utilize it, learning what you need versus what you don't need, not frivolously sort of allowing it to I don't know, go to like different fees and things like that. I definitely, when I was younger, did not understand money. Um, and I have a relationship with my dad actually that like he has made a lot of money in his life, and so a lot of that sort of shame came through the fact that like a lot of the way he showed love was through money. And so because of that, it's taken me a long time to like rewrite a lot of those like if I have to ask for money, which I don't anymore, but when I was younger, when I was in college or whatever, and there was a lot of shame around that. So yeah, so I've tried to be more open and more like learning about money and how I spend. Um I would say I spend my money. I mean, right now it's like paying the bills.
Wait, let's get to the spending in just a moment.
Okay.
Because you brought up a couple things that I would like to just touch on. And I really like that you went to what happened early on in life. That for me is like, whoa. So okay, what I want to point out to you is, yeah, I guess the Venus Saturn trine, but I'm gonna just make it Venus for a moment. So again, notice that Venus is at the bottom of your chart, right? Which is also the family, right? Where you
Okay.
come from. Okay. And so for me, Venus being there and Jupiter nearby, right? Your dad came from money. Apparently he made
Yep.
good money. Okay. So that tells me that this is an important part, right? That's really important. So you come from what would you say? What kind of wealth?
I mean, not anything crazy. I mean, my grandparents, I would say it came from my grandparents, which were his parents, and they're retired now. They're in their late 80s, and they are very hard workers. But my grandfather, I mean, he grew up in a time that was very beneficial for white men. I mean, like some of it is like he did work very, very hard, but they were also very, very lucky. So they did not grow up wealthy, but my grandfather worked really hard, and he made a decent amount of money. I wouldn't say we're not like in the upper crust, but I grew up very upper middle class. Like I did not want for anything. I never felt like food was an issue. Although I should say that that's kind of a loaded question, because I grew up with that, and then my parents split when I was 10 years old, and my dad grew the business that he has today, which again, I wouldn't say we're the upper echelon, but definitely very comfortable. I don't want to take away from that. I definitely had privilege growing up. And then my mom, on the other hand, she is not good with money. And so my sister and I primarily lived with her growing up, and she was very wasteful with money. She did not know how to manage it. She definitely had enough, but she never managed it correctly. And so we always felt like we didn't have enough. And especially I would say myself less than my sister. My sister noticed it a lot more, but like things like we would go and like buy something at the store, and then the next day she'd check her bank account, we'd have to take it back, kind of thing. Like it was just that we had enough, but it was so mismanaged. And that's a lot of where I think some of that shame comes from, as well as like I had one parent on one side where like money was almost like literally currency of like love. And my dad loves me so much. I don't mean to say that it was all money, but like, but definitely I think that was a way he showed, he didn't necessarily show the emotional as much as the, here, you need some money, here you go. Here, I'll fix your car kind of thing. Whereas my mom, on the other hand, was sort of that emotional stability, but like monetarily was not. So I kind of come from two very opposing monetary stances. And that being said, as much as my dad did have money, I don't necessarily think he was very good at managing it until he, slowly learned how to manage it better and better. And so I come from two very different mismanagings, one that had money and one that could have gotten by but just mismanaged. So yeah, so so that's the kind of wealth I come from, is I never had to, I never wanted for anything necessarily, but and there's always been a backstop, like if I really needed it, like, but at the same time I never learned how to manage my own money.
Okay. That brings up a lot, of course. I'm gonna try to parse them out one by one. Okay, so I'm gonna take out
Okay.
Jupiter. Actually, Jupiter is going to be important when we're talking about the timing, because you said some interesting things in regards to the time. But again, like you come from money, right? Your dad gave you lots of money. That's how he was showing you love. So there again, I just want to emphasize your Venus placement, right?
Yep.
Exactly conjunct that I see. Now, yeah, let's talk about him, and then we're going to go to your mom. Okay, I want to cover all the bases. So I just want to understand, once they separated, you were 10, and then he grew the business, like in what time frame thereafter?
Let's see. My dad has had a couple businesses. So he's had a couple successful businesses. Even when I was 10, he was working as a communications director. So he was making good money, and then he grew money in his own business. I would say it started like 2 years after that.
Okay.
Maybe 1 to 2 years. It was very, very soon after that.
Okay. So it would have been in 2002 that your parents split. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say, okay, so look at what happens. So right now we're looking at solar arc directions.
Okay.
Okay. Which is just it's like transits or secondary progressions, right? It's another tool, another technique that we use to understand what's it, like timelines and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I have the chart for 2002. You can see that your directed Jupiter is at 20 degrees Virgo. He'd move 10 degrees, right? Because 10 years had elapsed. Now, watch
Hmm.
what happens if I go forward 2 years. 1, 2.
Oh, wow. It's a
Yeah?
completely different. Yeah.
Right? So Jupiter conjoins your Imam Coeli, the bottom part of your chart. And you can see he's also applying to Venus. So if I go forward 1, 2, 3 more years, that'll be when you're
Hmm.
15, right? So this movement is what I hear when you tell me about your parents separating at 10, and then at 12 he took off and it was history after that. Right? So this is
Yeah,
what I see. Does that make sense?
that makes a lot of sense. That's really, really interesting.
Okay, very good. So let's go back to your chart. Now, your mom. Um, just a moment. Square applying. It should be. But why doesn't it? Okay, I don't know why it's not showing, but your moon is squaring your Saturn. It's an out of sign
Okay.
square. I want to explain very well. I don't understand why. Just give me a moment.
Take your
6.
time.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so about your mom. Notice that you have the moon in Libra. So for me, Libra is about money management, where it's
Okay.
about going to the bank and how much should I spend? How much do I have? What is my budget? Right? Making those decisions. So starting to think a little bit more organizationally. That's Libra. Okay. And you'll notice that in your case, your moon is squaring Saturn.
Okay.
And that makes me think about you going to the store with your mom and she doesn't manage her money well. And that's like a consistent theme and it's very embarrassing. So you have to go
Yeah,
back and learn things. Okay, so I feel these two stories both.
that's really, and they're very opposite.
Hmm. Okay. And then, so did your parents like provide for you to go to school and stuff as well?
Yep. So, well, I mean, I still have school loans,
Oh, you
but
do?
yeah, I still have school loans. I also went to grad school when I became a teacher. So I had did undergrad, and then and a portion of that was paid for both by my grandparents and then my dad, and then the rest were loans. And then grad school, I think, if I can remember correctly, was all loans. Um, yeah, so
Mhm.
I have a lot of schooling and yeah, a lot of loans.
So how much would you say you have in loans?
Right now it's at $40,000, which I've
Okay.
heard for my age is not that much.
Oh my word. Yeah, typical American debt slavery.
Yep,
I'm
cool.
a part of it too. Trust me, I have. Okay.
I like for
Um,
I feel like that debt, like almost in my head, is not real because I'm like we're all starting from that.
yeah, I see. Does that debt get in your way? Is that on your mind? Does that affect your
Not
financial?
until like 2 weeks ago when they sent out the email saying like they're gonna redo it this summer. So I mean I guess to some extent it is, but um I also, where I'm at with money right now, I know I will pay it down. I'm not like staying up at night thinking about it. I feel that at right now I feel comfortable enough that like I said in the beginning, with money, that I'll figure it out, and if I need to pull back in one way to pay something else, then I will do that. Just because I feel way more comfortable with how I manage my money now than I did, you know, I don't know, a couple years ago.
Mhm. So you started managing your money, maybe was it last year especially?
Yes, I would say in the last couple years. So when I stopped teaching, I really my so when I stopped teaching, my husband works, but we kind of keep our finances separate. So I started working part-time as a vision therapist, which is essentially someone we are like a therapist for the eyes. And so I was not making anywhere near what I was making as a teacher. And I would say there were 2 years I did that while I was trying to sort of figure out, okay, what's next? I thought I was going to be a teacher for the rest of my life, sort of situation. And so it was a time of a huge growth. And I would say money was a huge part of that, where I had to learn what to do on very little. Obviously, my husband was very supportive and helped me. But at the same time, I wanted to do it myself and I wanted to learn, because I figured, well, when I do start making more money again, I don't want to be wasting it. So I better figure out how to manage my money now with less, and then it'll be so much easier when I make more money. So I would say there's been a huge focus in the last couple years, and in the last year is when I started my new job. And so I'm trying to take advantage of now, my sort of personal like income, because my dad also was a huge factor in me and my sister making our own money and not being dependent on someone else, because that's how my mom was, is she was very dependent on my dad, and then was able to, not able to manage her money as well. So that's been a huge, point of stress for me, of stress in the way of like really trying to look at it and make sure that I'm doing it correctly, so that I never have to be dependent on someone.
Okay, there's a few things that come up for me. One of them is about your natal chart again. It makes me think about like Venus being again on the cusp of your fourth house. And in your case, the situation in regards to money, like I keep hearing, it goes back to your father had money, your mom didn't, your mom managed it poorly. So there was that kind of situation between them that over time has made you pretty aware of money and a little bit more intelligent with it, let's say. So there I feel the Venus-Saturn trine.
Okay.
How you're not frivolous.
No, I don't think I can be, to be honest with you, in this economy.
Yeah. And what I want to show you about the last 2 years, and especially the last year, like, remove Venus a bit just to make it clear. Okay, so now I'm on March of 25. It actually doesn't matter too much because we're talking about the transit of Saturn. So you can see Saturn was on your midheaven, exactly opposite your Venus. That would have been basically for the entirety of 25. Okay. So think about that. You stop being a teacher and now you're trying to figure out, so what are your next steps? And there's like a huge transition happening for you, like a huge reckoning, right? So there's Saturn on the midheaven, and that is connected to you having less money, less resources, and having to rely on your husband a bit more. Yeah, right?
Like exactly opposite.
Yes. And seeing it that whole time you're working with less and you're figuring out how to be smart with money, how to manage with money on a tighter budget. How do you get better for the future, right? Putting all that attention and focus on it during that period. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And that direct correlation. Yep. 100%.
Okay. Very good. And what you can notice now is that Saturn has just started moving away from the opposition. So it's still pretty fresh. Right? Because look, if I just go back 1, 2, 3 months ago, right? Saturn was still making a very close opposition. Now he's away. So you probably feel like, okay, that part is getting a little bit easier. Is it?
Yep. 100%. It's just like even I do, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but like over those 2 years, I did rack up some credit card debt just because I didn't have enough, and I'm paying that off. And it feels easier. It doesn't feel like there's as much friction as there was. So that makes a lot of sense.
Very good. Yeah. I would point out one other part about you paying off debt now. And that is about Pluto moving through your 8th house. And so I feel how maybe when Pluto was conjunct your Saturn, you were racking up debt, like to make ends meet, more or less. And then now that he's in the 8th, you're kind of trying to cleanse yourself slowly. And not only have the credit card debt, but as I understood, you have school loans, quite some.
Yep.
Right. So
and I honestly, like, if that comes along and I need to do it, I kind of want to just do it, get it over with. So it's definitely that feeling of just like forward momentum and not necessarily how much I'm making, but how to utilize it correctly. So yes, 100%.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's talk. It brings up some questions, but I just want to make sure that we ask about your spending. What do you like to
Mhm.
spend? What is valuable to you? What are some of your most expensive items?
Um, I mean, are we talking other than bills? Because I think like my bills are kind of
Well,
like my
let's include the bills, and especially if
okay.
there's something interesting about the bills. You have to pay this because of I like to have the details.
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
Well, I mean, my main payments are rent, which right now we're very, very lucky. We don't pay too much rent. But we're moving, so that's probably going to change because we're kind of like grandfathered into our rent right now, but we're not really worried about that. My husband is actually interviewing at a new job, so we'll probably get a little bit of a salary bump there. And then my car, which again I don't think is too much, but I like pay 340 every month for that one. My debt is a huge one. I just am trying to throw as much money at that. As an artist, I spend, I would say, money on paints, and canvas and stretcher bars and things like that, which does add up. I would say that is sort of my like my splurge purchase for myself. I do love clothes. I think um as an artist, that's also part of like I love design, I love interior design, I love all of that kind of thing, but I also am very conscious about the earth and things like that. So almost all of my clothes are thrifted, and I am very thoughtful about what I bring into my wardrobe. I try and use what I have and try and sort of relook at it rather than going out and buying new clothing that's eventually going to end up in a landfill. So yeah, that's probably the big ones. I mean, we love to go out to dinner, but we've kind of pulled back on that a little bit. But we used to go out to dinner all the time. We both grew up in families that like food was like a huge part of it, and like going out to eat and being around family. So like that was big. But again, I've tried to manage a little more. We don't need to go out every single week. We can wait and go out every 2 weeks. So we're trying to be better about that. We love to travel, but that's not always, I mean, if we can do it, we do, but that's not like a monthly spending thing, I would say. That's not like um, yeah, but traveling is a huge part of, has been a huge part of my life. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know if that's
Traveling's been a
comparable.
huge part of your life. I want to get to that. I just want to understand. So, is it now during this period especially that you and your husband are more like, let's not go out to eat, let's just be a little bit smart, let's save up,
Yep.
let's put things off. Okay. So you guys are kind of like pedal like it's crunch time at the moment.
Yeah. We'd like to buy a house in the next couple years. So we're sort of like looking more long term than we are short term. Um, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, so I have your progressions.
Okay.
And in your progress chart, progress Venus is at 3 Scorpio, progress Saturn is at 3 Aquarius. So you're currently going through an exact progressed Venus Saturn square.
Okay. What does that mean?
Well, you keep using this language of like, we don't need to go out every day, and I'm trying to throw money at all my loans, and I'm just paying off the bills in the car. There's not a lot of it's not excitement. It's kind of like,
Right.
right now you have to just make do. This is like a building period, let's say.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Okay. So
That
there's the
makes
Venus
sense.
Saturn, like the tightness.
Yep.
Actually, that makes me wonder about other things that are not related to money, but we're not going to go there. Okay. 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 Mm-hmm.
It does make, I mean, in a lot of parts of my life, tightening up and um yeah, it does. But we won't go there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you said that you grew up in families that were really into food.
Yeah, so I mean, on my side, my dad actually um one of his clients for a long time was the New York State Restaurant Association. So like we would go, and because my parents were divorced, a lot of times he would come
Uh-huh.
pick me and my sister up and we'd go out to eat. He'd make us like grade restaurants by like a couple things like quality food, like service. Like, so we grew up in like the restaurant business as like, it was very, normal to go out to eat. And we try, my family is very, adventurous eater, like we'll try anything kind of thing. And then when I met my
Oh,
husband, he has that as well. So yeah.
okay. Okay, there's two things about that. There's one thing you said that really clicked things into place. We're gonna get there in just a moment. Um, Venus Jupiter conjunct, even though they're a little
Okay.
distant from each other. And this is where I feel that you come from, foodie family, and you guys were adventurous eaters, and you would try just anything, and you love to sample. Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Now I wanted to understand with the United States, what association of what? You said something.
So it's just called the New York State Restaurant Association. So all it is like restaurants will pay to be in this association. It's basically like networking, capitalist trying
Okay,
to know,
hold on a
but
minute.
it's like a group kind of thing.
But what is your father's relationship to them?
So this was back when I was younger, but he was their communications person. So they hired him to essentially do like public relations, communications. He did a lot of their like website. I think he designed their logo, kind of thing, like things like that. He's now more in the renewable sector, but this was before renewable energy, excuse me. So like wind power and yeah, and hydro and all those kinds of things. But he was sort of all over the place, where when he was building his business, he was trying to just get clients, and one of those was the New York State Restaurant Association and the New York State Wine and Grape Association. So they're just groups essentially that are, to help the restaurateurs meet each other and sort of, have a bigger group to talk about issues and things like that. So that includes New York City, which is a huge
Okay,
part of
so
it
you
too.
so you would go to these events frequently.
Mhm.
With
Yeah,
these
so we go to
meetings.
events, and he knew a lot of the owners of restaurants. Like I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Food Network, but we met some of those chefs, the like famous ones like Guy
Uh-huh.
Fieri and like those, like
I get
yeah.
it. Okay. So listen, this is just fantastic. Okay. I would say that in the background there's always the Venus Jupiter because of
Okay.
all the variety and all the okay. But what really, now I see that trine between Venus and Saturn, because Aquarius, as we talked about earlier, is about organizations.
Okay.
In this
And
case, it
that,
would be
yeah,
the
this is an
New York State
organization.
Restaurant Association, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
there's the trine
Yep.
with Venus at the bottom, yeah. That you would go all the time and dine with them and go to those kind of
Yep.
official events that are like sponsored by real adults, right? And they're doing things like
Yep.
for business. But here you get to just eat plenty, and your father is like at the center of attention, right? You're the little girl, like the daughter of the cool guy or whatever, right? So there I see this story playing out very much. Does it make sense?
Yes, that is my father, the center of attention. Yes, that
Okay.
makes that yep. And
Okay,
I
so
mean, associations in general, I think like my family has always been like, I think about my grandparents who I'm close with as well, and my grandfather has been head like has organized like groups and things. Like my grandparents are very into giving back and things, and so they've organized all these groups, and there's a constant theme in my life of groups. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
there it is. Yep, Venus on the cusp of your fourth, linked with Saturn in Aquarius. Okay. And the
Okay.
Saturn Aquarius is like, for me, those groups are also kind of official groups, like a
Yep.
nonprofit, or they okay. Okay, so so assets in your life, like one of the valuable things that were easily coming to you was
His
food
groups
from,
and
from these
food, but
groups,
like
yeah.
yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, great. So that makes sense, right?
Yeah, so much sense. And food has always been something that's been so seamless. And like, I mean, that was one of the like, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, I don't think I could have married my husband if he didn't like food like I do. But yeah, no, it's a huge, it's also a huge theme of love in our family. So, and energy. And so obviously energy and money are, kind of one and the same. So that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, I'm also feeling like because of the Virgo, right now we're getting into the Virgo part. Virgo for me is a lot about variety, like different ingredients, different techniques that you can use to combine the ingredients, make something unique. Makes me think about you also being kind of a fanciful cook. Maybe you or
I
your
love to
husband.
cook. Yep.
Okay.
No, not him. Definitely not him, but me. Yes.
Okay.
And my dad, actually, that comes from the male line, is my dad. It was, always the cook in our family. My mom was not as much the cook. So that creativity comes straight from him.
Okay. And so that tells me that also probably you spend money on stuff for the kitchen, like
Yep.
nice tools, right? Nice ingredients, having all the
Yep.
seasonings that you want and the nice glasses for the containers. It
Hmm.
makes me think also about spending, like making sure the house is organized and everything has its place, kind of.
Yes. So well, I wish. That's my husband's side of things, I would say. My husband is very organized, unlike me. I'm sort of the artist side of things, which is like, just chaos, which I said is that's how I've tried to learn. I am getting better, but it's been a slow process. And I would say home as well, is something that, in terms of, I think this relates to money, because in general, like, we moved around a lot, when we were children, because my parents split up. And like I said, my mom was just not good at managing her money. So we moved into the house that I had with my parents to an apartment, and I lived in an apartment for all of high school. Um, and uh, and then I continued to live in apartments because I went to college and, became an adult in my own right. And so having a home has always been sort of this goal for me. It's been sort of like, and
Mm,
it's been, that's a monetary thing, is that we just have not been able to get there, and it feels so unattainable that,
mm,
yeah, so that's a lot of, but I put a ton of emphasis on it. Like, I have mood boards about different rooms that I'm going to have in my house. As an artist, like, my surroundings are so important to me. And, I read Architectural Digest cover to cover every month. Like, I'm obsessed with homes, and that's the kitchen, but also kind of expanded into the greater house. And, I'm sure when I have a house, that's where the majority of my time and energy and money will go.
Beautiful. Okay. So does that make sense? Like just
Yes.
just by seeing Venus where she is alone.
Yep.
Okay. Like home, like having that house is the most valuable thing in life for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Which that sounds so like that sounds like I'm so shallow, but it's so much more than that. I think there's so much depth there,
Of course. It's
beyond that. So
it's also your creative space.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there is.
100%.
Okay. Okay, so your expenditures would also go into the house.
Yes.
Okay. Hmm. See, that also makes me think about the Venus Saturn somehow. I don't get the Aquarius or the seventh yet. Maybe just the fact that you're doing that with your husband, like you guys are
Hmm.
working together, because you said that it's a thing for both of you that it seems unattainable because you keep saving up, you keep saving up. So there I feel that how it's a constant situation for you, feeling like you don't have enough for the thing that you want most.
I also would say, and I don't know if this is applicable, I'm very, very close to my younger sister. And that's been a
Yes.
huge thing for her. And her and her boyfriend just literally this past week put in an offer on a house that was accepted. And this has been like, she is so nervous. She is so, because her money, and not to get away from my chart, but hers manifested in such a different way from my parents, which is she's just very sort of like a stickler about money, and she's very money conscious and very, whereas for me, it took a really long time to get there. She's always been like that. She's always been very like, I have this exact amount. I don't want to overspend. I don't want to, and she's very meticulous. She's a lawyer, so she's very meticulous, but she should be more of the first child, and I am the first child. So it's interesting because that whole thing about it being a group it definitely is a group, because her and I have struggled so long with, oh my God, we want a house. We want, the home has been a huge thing for both of us.
Okay, so there's a few things coming up for me. One, that your Venus again is at the cusp of your fourth house, and Venus is obviously usually a girl, right? And Virgo ruled by Mercury, right? So here we have the sister, and that you're very close to her. Venus is on the cusp of your fourth house in Virgo, yeah? So she's the closest person to you, okay? And again, the Venus-Saturn contact, your sister is a stickler for money. She's very money conscious, right? So it shows it, by the way, everyone in your life also shows in your chart.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And also that she's a lawyer, because what do lawyers do? They work with organizations. They work with a lot of rules, right? So there again, you see it manifested as your sister, that Venus-Saturn trine. Okay, good. The other part of it is like the Cancer rising. Right, so for me, immediately that makes you more of a family-oriented person. There's more going on with your parents, with your siblings, with your spouse, with your children, and so forth. Do you have kids?
Nope, not yet. I don't know if we ever will, but not yet.
Okay. And the other part of it is like, if I just show you the transits that are right now, you can see Jupiter sitting on your ascendant in Cancer. That makes me think about your sister that is now finally getting a house, what she's always dreamed of.
Yep.
Okay.
That makes,
So when you say that it seems like unattainable, how many years do you think it's going to take you to get a house? And do you already know what your budget is for the house, where you're going to, do you know anything about that already?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting because we were looking at home. So, I'm sorry, where are you located in the world?
Germany.
Oh, Germany. Okay. So I don't know if you've ever been to New York or upstate New York, but there's New York City, and then we're upstate, which is very not New York City. I'm from a little town called Saratoga Springs. They make Saratoga water, if you've ever seen that. The blue bottles, that's where that comes from. And then my husband is from Syracuse, New York, so that's about 2-3 hours away. We are sort of in this in-between spot right now where I've been trying. My sister is back in Saratoga, that Albany area where I was born, and my mom is, and my dad is, and so we're like in Syracuse right now, and we're slowly moving back. I go between right now because my job is there, but my husband will be moving over too. This is a very long story. I apologize. But that being said, we had been looking in Syracuse a couple of years ago for a home. And then we made the choice that we were going to move over to the Albany area. And so we actually put in a few offers into homes and things like that, that thank goodness didn't go through, because we would have stayed here. And now we're looking more in the area where I'm from. So kind of that area is what we're not really specifically have one place in mind. It's kind of going to depend, because the housing market is crazy right now. So kind of what we can afford. Our budget, I would say, is like $300,000 to $350,000. My husband's father is pretty successful, and he said that he would help. My grandparents have said that they'll help. So we have a little bit of help if we need it. I would like to do it on our own, but we are I'm not like, we have support, which is very, very nice.
So, okay, there again, it's so interesting. This is what, that happens a lot. Well, I have a lot of things open. Okay, let me just remove some planets to make it easier. Okay, even Saturn. Okay, so first of all, you're moving to be close to your family, and you're going back to the area where you're from originally. Okay, that's all fourth house, and Venus being there. Yeah. So I can see you have a close relationship with your family, and they're very important for you. And also, you get support from them. and also
Yep.
from your husband's family, right? So what I see is that in terms of money, and let's just say like resources, one of the bottomless resources for you in a way, or like something that's very reliable, appears to be family on both sides.
Hmm. Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, especially my husband's family is a little less, there's a little less attached to money, I think, for them, which is
Mhm.
a really interesting, what I've seen with him growing up versus me growing up, I think is very different. Is money always has this stigma for me, whereas for him, it 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 sort of comes and goes, and he's not quite as worried about it as I am. So
You
yeah.
know what's interesting now? I'm feeling the how Venus and Jupiter are both around that point,
Hmm.
and that you grew up with money, kind of, right? Let's just say in comparison to the rest of the world, right? Having a
Yeah, I
success,
don't want to like say that I wasn't privileged because I do realize I was,
right?
comparatively.
And so, and not only that, but also, like your husband also is around, so, right? So you're around families that have money. That's really the point I
Yeah.
want to make. Venus, Jupiter, fourth house cusp. Like that's a theme for you.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay, that makes me wonder also if there's a lot of money being exchanged between your family. Like sometimes your sister gives you a loan or you go into buying something together. Is there any such thing?
Um, it's actually funny. I think back when I was younger and I wasn't good at money, and she was actually working. She was in college, but she was working for the Irish Parliament. So she was over in Dublin, and I went to go visit her, and she ended up having to pay for part of my trip, which I paid her back for. But because I thought a paycheck was coming in and it wasn't. And so she did have to give me a loan. So she's really hasn't throughout my life, but that comes to mind when I think she definitely has given me a loan before. Um, and I wouldn't say necessarily people have given me loans in my life, but like I said, my dad, like, I mean, when I was in college, he paid for where I lived and he would give me a stipend per month to pay, so I definitely wasn't necessarily a loan, it was him paying for me to live, but I would say along those terms, yes. I'm trying to think of what else. My grandparents' education has always been huge in my family, so my grandparents definitely contributed to my education. Again, not really a loan because that was something they valued very highly. But yeah, that support came from there as well. And then my parents-in-law definitely my father-in-law is a doctor, and so he did very, very well. And they constantly are just giving to their children and just helping out, like medical bills, things like that. So yes, we definitely have a lot of support, and maybe not per se like loans, but a lot of support from family.
Very good. Great. And the other thing is that you said education was a sticking point for your family, right?
Mhm.
So Venus and Jupiter conjunct, Jupiter being education, the third house, and also the
Yep,
Virgo, right? So all of those learning elements kind of, and therefore your
definitely.
family being really supportive of
Yes.
yeah.
And
And
his family as well. So it's kind of coming from both sides. His education was like a huge thing.
okay. Right? So do you see most people don't have that story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And there's one other part that you said that just really, I mean, that for me is again very fun. About your sister, that she worked for the
Hmm.
Irish Parliament, right? So there's again right? The Venus Saturn that
Yep.
we talked about. But in this case, also notice that it's Irish. What do we learn at the beginning of this call? That you have Irish heritage,
Yep.
right? And so there's the fourth house, the Ireland, the Irish Parliament she's working for.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
The
So that
family
makes
straight
sense.
through. Yep.
Okay, great. Mhm. Good. Okay. What are some closing remarks for you in terms of like now that you've been thinking about your money a little bit? Yeah, what comes up, if anything?
I mean, this is just all really fascinating. And I think, I mean, I love the fact that it's so directly related to childhood, which I think for so much of us, so many of us, that's like exactly what it is. And sort of like really looking at that and pulling it out and sort of learning from it, because I think that oftentimes when we just speak it into existence, it can kind of get rid of a lot of that, whatever associations we have. um yeah, the organization stuff is really interesting. I've always been pulled towards not always like, I know we were saying I have so much of that like, adult organization sort of stuff in my chart. But I'm always pulled towards like starting organizations. Like I've been thinking actually recently of starting an artists just group. So not really, like I mean, who knows if it would grow into something bigger, but sort of just a small group where people can come together, because I think I feel most alive in those arenas where I can like talk and exchange ideas with people. Yeah, I think more of the I mean, I've always believed in more regional groups. I think especially, not to bring politics into it, but like what's going on in America right now and all over the world is that we need to get back to those sort of groups that are smaller, that are more community based, and that don't depend on sort of the larger groups, because as we can see, the larger organizations and larger groups often create not great things. So, being able to kind of come back to those smaller ones, I think are just as important. So I think it's interesting because as much as the larger, groups and more formal groups have been such a huge part of my life, I also wonder how those smaller groups are going to come into play, especially, in our changing world where, these governments are becoming overthrown and are being exposed. Coming back to these smaller groups of people within our communities, I think is going to be really important. So I think I'm excited to see how that could change throughout, my chart in the future.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, it makes me think about the Aquarius energy nevertheless, but the fact that you specifically brought up how you like to be in conversation with people and you love the exchange, that for me immediately like really brings your Libra moon into focus. And then when you start to talk about regional, right? So that's more local. Then I feel like the intimacy of the fourth house, right? Connected with that
Yeah.
Saturn Aquarius. So something that is more close to home, like very personal, but still more
Yeah,
of like social togetherness.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So this
Okay.
was awesome. Thank you so much. This was just really informative.
Okay. Do you think it was informative for people that want to learn about money and
I hope
astrology?
so.
No.
I hope I didn't go on too much. I feel like I'm a big talker, so I hope that people could get things out of it. But yeah, no, I learned so much. Like, and I think it is hard, like you said, it's so hard to, not get off of the subject of money, because I think money is so intertwined in every facet of our lives, and it can be such it's actually so crazy that you chose money, because a friend of mine is an energy worker, and she last week did a healing for her and I about money. And so when you said like, oh my gosh, we should make this about money, I was like, well, that checks out because we just did this. But like learning really sort of that it's, I think it's so stigmatized. This idea of money is so like, it can be like bad and evil. And like, this is what big corporations are, are they're rich and everything. But like really thinking about how money applies to our lives and making it less scary and making it less, just having those connotations of dirty and, and unethical billionaires and all of these things, and bringing it home and saying, nope, like we can establish what it means to us. So yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, and in the astrology field, it's also about usually you hear like these placements mean you're going to be a millionaire, and life is just a little more tricky than that and more
Yep.
subtle. And so one of the ideas here is to actually give people a realistic perspective about how money works in the chart without,
Yep.
doing very excitable, actually the practical realities. Yeah. Okay.
100%. And that's what I got from it. So it was perfect.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording and we'll talk for a couple more
Cool.
minutes. But
Cool.
yeah, for anyone that made it through, I hope that was very educational. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.